hello from OG Star Wars, Laura Baggett, and so it's been a crazy maybe 24, almost 48 hours, and if you follow me on Twitter, you'll understand why, but I am not here to talk about that. What I'm here to talk about is, even though he's not my favorite character of all in Star Wars, he's damn near up there, and that's Han Solo. And I've done a few videos on him because he's been in the limelight, or his story has been coming up a lot, especially now that Kasdan spoke out about Solo. And what I want to do is share why I can relate to him, not because of gender, not because of race, but here's my story, okay? And I'm not afraid to share my story. And if you watched my, have you watched my Twitter live stream last night? Or if you're viewing this on another day, go find it. I'll repost it on occasion. But here's my story. Growing up, I was raised by my grandmother, a very beautiful, wise Lakota elder. And we are from the Sichangu Lakota Oyate, or the Rosebud Sioux tribe. And what happened with me is my parents, both native mix, they abused drug and alcohol and themselves and each other. And I, being the firstborn of their two children, I was caught up in the abuse. So I was hospitalized for ribs being broken, for blood transfusion, for bruises, but most of all because I was a shaken baby. So I recovered miraculously as a shaken baby, and it was a miracle, and maybe I'll go on that story later. So from there, in the state of California, my grandmother gained custody of me. If this was in South Dakota during that time frame, I would have been adopted away out of the tribe. So she took custody of me, took care of me, caught me up in development with my other cousins, and really spent her best time of her life making sure I was okay. And then through my life, I have seen and dealt with even my own family members, like my auntie, basically saying I'm not good enough, that I'm a burden to her mom, just many things like that. So how does this relate to Han Solo? Well, when you look at his story in the EU, the original EU, not at the explained universe, yes, we're still using that word, he was orphaned. He was raised by a crime lord. And yeah, my grandma wasn't part of a crime lord, and that's not what I'm comparing. I'm comparing the story, like how I can relate to him. And he also was raised by a beautiful woman, a Wookiee woman, Dulana. And from there, he freed himself, and his life he led was to take care of himself. He wanted to be a pilot. We all know the story, and he, from going into the services, he freed Chewie and remained a smuggler. Then he met Leia through Luke after getting R2. And so the story with that. And so what I'm getting at is that his development after all of what he went through and what he had become was a man, a respectable man, who wanted a good life because he was an orphan. So he changed a lot about himself, but still kept his roguish humor and ways. We see that in the EU. He became a diplomat and helped Leia out. He stood by her side. He was madly in love with her. So what I'm getting at is myself. I could have played a victim. I could have went into drug and alcohol saying, hey, my life was terrible, poor me, boo-hoo, and I could have regressed. But I didn't. I decided to be the example for people like me. And that's how I see Han. He's a great example of coming from being an orphan, being a scoundrel, smuggler, to finding the love of his life, having a family, and wanting to do what's best for his family. That is what I can relate to with him. I got married, had kids, or I had one kid, got married, 2 kids, got married, had my 3rd kid. I decided to continue to teach the lore, our heritage, through dance and through cultural enrichment, to the youth in the community where I live at. Do what's best and be the best I can be for those who are looking up at me. And I even, led some activism, campaign for gambling rights and Proposition 1A. My family has made a stance at Standing Rock against the pipeline. So I know what it is to stand up for our rights. And I know what it is as a woman to stand up for our rights. And I'm not here to preach about that stuff. But what I'm getting at is when Disney took over and reinvented Han, they regressed him. And so people now believe that once you live a particular way, you're not gonna want to make good of yourself. Yeah, we see that. I see my own family members who went through some of their own trials and watched their parents drink and do drugs, and yet they want to do the same thing and instead of improving their lives. And yeah, so people will, mimic what and how they are raised. And then there's the 1% in that kind of situation that will say, F that shit, I'm going to do what's good for myself and raise my kids the best of my ability so they don't have to go through the struggles I went through. And that's how I seen Han. And Disney regressed him. We see him giving up on his family, going back in his smuggling way because, that's all he knows. That's total bullshit. He was still young when he met Leia and they eventually married. And so from there, he had a chance to say, hey, I can change my ways. I can start a family. I can now be this pilot. I can now do something good because my life in the past, I didn't have that. And that's what we need to see. We need to encourage to change the ways, our ways from whatever circumstances we come from. I would rather have someone who is fighting addiction to look at Han's arc and Han's arc and see how what he had overcame with adversity than in the original EU, than to see his arc in the Disney explained universe, because you see that he made changes. You see that he wanted what was good for his family and that he was willing to do those changes. You see that, he still kept his personality and he still kept his roguish ways, I guess you can say, but he changed because he wanted that change. And that is a good example. And we relate to the human condition, not necessarily the race of the character or the gender of the character. We look at their story arc. We look at what they went through. That's what motivates us. That's what inspires us. Now, if they are from our same race, that's pretty cool. But that's not relating to the human condition. The human condition is basically what a person does and how they act and how they change. Can we relate to that? Can we relate to their struggles and embrace it and say, hey, that is pretty cool. I think I can do something like that. So I just wanted to expound a little bit more on that. Yeah, he's not my number one favorite character, but it doesn't matter. It's about the human condition and relating to the character. And so from here, just go ahead and I encourage you to read Han Solo trilogy. I encourage you to follow his arc. The Corellian trilogy is an awesome one because it involves his kids. and Thrak can sell Solo some more. So if you're interested in the Solo, Han Solo's arc, there are some books right there for you to read. And again, compare and contrast. Look at what George Lucas's team did to create such an awesome, phenomenal character and how much it's regressed. All right, I gotta go now. So you guys have a great day.